You guys want to hear Leper War or Black Vomit?
What sounds better? Anthony, what do you want to hear, man? Leper War or Black Vomit?
Black Vomit.
Yeah! Yes. All right, let's see what you got.
My name's Charlie Dram. I'm 29 years old. Yeah, I never really thought of a cool name to play under. Like, you know, when I started recording, I never had the idea that like, I'm gonna be a musician, you know, and I'm just gonna start putting out stuff. And I mean, for the longest time, I just did it, you know, in my bedroom or whatever. I didn't really know, you know, there was any kind of interest or anything. It was just something I just did. And, yeah, when I started putting out stuff, I, you know, tried to think of some like cool name or something like evil sounding or whatever, and I just could never think of anything. So I just started playing under my own name, and, you know, it's kind of a two-edged sword because, you know, there's a thing where you can pretty much, you know, I try to, you know, to do different things, and I don't want to be lumped into one kind of sound. But I don't want to be one of those dudes that like has a different like project name for like every single, you know, like, oh, this is my like synth band, and then this is my like, you know, like free jazz unit or whatever.
My name is Nathan Young. I'm 32. Main project, I guess. I've been playing with Wolf Eyes for about 12 years now. Some of my side projects are Demons, which is, I don't know, like 2 years, something like that. And that's like me and another guy. And my girlfriend does visuals for that. And I have a solo project, couple solo projects, but mainly it's just me, you know. I have one under the name Hatred and one under the name Regression, but I've been kind of, I don't know, whatever. People don't really, I notice when I go on tour, they just kind of put whatever name they want on the flyer. Sometimes it's just Nate Young, but then sometimes it's Hatred, sometimes it's Regression. You never really can tell now.
Name is Hans Ganish, east side of Detroit.
I think I started, when I started listening to music in general, I listened to a lot of my brother's records, and he was like this kind of punk rocker, like total punk rock guy. Mohawk, the whole 9 yards, but you know, also a really talented oil painter. So he was a child prodigy, you know, like straight A kind of guy. And I got into some of his records, like Velvet Underground, Captain Beefheart, you know, and that was kind of the extent. Maybe Birthday Party, a little bit of Birthday Party. That was the kind of stuff that I pulled out of his crates that kind of, I don't know, I could hear something a little different or something. I don't know, a little more, I don't know, even then I wasn't really sure what psychedelic really was, but, oh, then there was Jimi Hendrix, you know, so I had kind of an idea, you know, of what totally psychedelic crazy music was, but I wouldn't necessarily, it was kind of like, I didn't decide to play music at all. Like, it's just one, well, I guess I did. All right. Well, it came about that way. It's just kind of hanging out in my bedroom, young, smoking weed, you know, totally smoking weed. And just one night I remember getting especially stoned and putting on the blue screen on my TV, you know, the VCR screen. And just kind of really spacing out and really just destroying this little guitar I had, just crumpling it to bits. This little acoustic guitar, you know, just totally gnarling it. But like hearing something, you know, real familiar, and like just kind of like, I don't know, it dawned on me while I was doing it. I was just like, man, I can like hear so many different things going on in this like weird chaos, you know, like. And then, you know, from there, I think after that moment, as soon as I stopped, you know, I was like, oh yeah, you know, I could just totally start like a band or something. I was just like, yeah, I need to like. I was like, I don't know, it was weird. Like it dawned on me at that moment. I was like, there's so much sound inside this total chaotic, weird, just destruction or something. You know, this acoustic guitar in this psychedelic blue light. I don't know. I was 15, man. But that's totally how it came about. You know.
I guess I've always been kind of attracted to it. Like, it could be anything. Like, you're outside, you can hear the freighters. Like, you know, living on the east side. Like, you hear all these weird environmental sounds, freighters, train tracks, cars, ambulances, police cars. And I guess that's what I like about noise, is not so much like what's like there when you first hear it, but on repeated listens, like what's really in the mix.
I wasn't aware when I was a kid of like noise, music, or anything. Again, I grew up in a small town, pretty sheltered. Basically, your music you heard was on like whatever was played on the radio, or like if you had MTV or something, which I didn't have it growing up. So I never really was aware of any kind of noise scene per se, or even what it really was. I was into, you know, I was always into more difficult bands or more weirder stuff. Like, I always like stuff that wasn't, you know, mainstream or just crazier sounding shit, but it wasn't like it is now, where you can easily wake up in the morning and, you know, decide, like, hear about something like, oh, there's this kind of music that I've never heard about, and you can just go online and, you know, download a bunch of bands' entire discographies and have an idea what that is. When I was a kid, I mean, this was in like the early 90s, there wasn't that. And I grew up in such a small town, it was hard to find stuff. So I wasn't really aware that there was any kind of noise scene right away. It was more just like I'd hear maybe a crazy band and be like, wow, that's weird, you know, or whatever. Well, I've always had an interest with like tape recording, especially when I was a kid, maybe like 6 or 7 years old. I would make little cassettes on a little boombox with a built-in mic in it. When I became a teenager, like I said, I tried to you know, learn how to play guitar. And this is, you know, most teenagers want to, you know, start a band or be in a band. And of course, I tried to, some of my friends tried to start a band or anything, but they never really went anywhere. Because I had one friend that was really a good guitar player, but he would just want to play cover songs. Well, I'm incompetent as a guitar player, so I never had any interest in that. So again, it ended up being me just sitting in my room, you know, just making recordings of stuff that I would just be goofing around.
When I'm thinking about it, and I don't know how other people do it, like, I basically will like set up things in a different line. And I'm usually like not recording, but like I'll see if I like how that goes. And like maybe I'll try to like do like 15 or 20 minutes based around like that individual setup. Other times like I'll think about like, you know, if I do this to a guitar or I do this to a tape player, like what will happen? Like, and sometimes it sounds like fuck. And sometimes it sounds great, so.
ended up meeting this group of kids that were all interested in the same things I was interested in, you know, skateboarding and art, you know. My brother being like, you know, really into the arts, you know, and being a really talented painter, like that was always part of my life growing up, you know. So I met other people who were also interested in that kind of like skateboarding, punk rock, and also the arts, you know. So I met kids who were interested, but also not really doing anything yet either. And then we all kind of just progressed into it, like, you know, having big parties and, I don't know, just banging on scrap metal and stuff.
It probably wasn't until I was a senior in high school, I still lived in northern Michigan, I came down with some friends. We went to Detroit to see Sonic Youth play. And Universal Indians opened up for them, which had John Olson and Gretchen Gonzalez and Aaron Dillaway. And that was the first time I'd ever seen anybody play like freeform music or noise or whatever you want to call it. And it, honestly, I mean, it blew my mind because at the time I wasn't aware, you know, again, I just thought it was something, I wasn't aware that people were actually like doing that kind of thing. And, you know, just being like, you know, these guys are like playing this kind of stuff that I, you know, sounded like the stuff that I had been kind of doing in my room or things I'd been interested in.
I don't know, I think I was 18 when I formed my first like actual band, you know, and, or joined an actual band, but it wasn't really a band. It was a band art. It was called Scheme, and it wasn't necessarily a band yet when we first formed. It was just an idea. It was kind of like, I don't know, let me just describe it. My friend Twig, him and this guy Tom Klepek approached some frats. You know, we were in Ann Arbor at that time, and approached some frats to see if they would have us perform at one of their fucking parties, right? But they would give them tapes of like some obscure funk band, or even not even like they give them a Parliament tape and be like, "Yeah, man, this is our band." You know, we all had blue hair and like, you know, weird punk clothes. You know, so they're like, "Oh yeah, all right, show up." So we'd show up to the party, start loading in garbage, and that's all we'd load in, like trash cans full of, you know, whatever, tires, just whatever, just straight up trash, like glass, just tons and tons of trash. And then we'd cut the power to the house and then just trash the place and then run.
I actually got a hold of Aaron Dillaway through Hanson Records because I'd been ordering from him. And I saw that he had a distro, and just by looking through it, I'd see all these weird, you know, like homemade tapes from all over the world. So I finally got in touch with them, and we had traded stuff before or whatever. I'd been in touch with them, and I said, you know, I have a couple things I recorded. At the time, I just recorded this one tape, March of Slimes, which was the name of it. It was more kind of like this weird prepared guitar kind of tape collage thing. And I had recorded it and made a bunch of them, you know, made homemade art and whatever. And I just was sitting on them because I gave a few to my friends, but I didn't know what to do with this. So I had gotten in touch with Dillaway and said, you know, I have this tape, and would you like to carry it in your distro or whatever? And he said, sure, whatever. So I, you know, sent them to him, and I think I like traded them for a bunch of, you know, whatever. And he really liked the tape. And, you know, wrote me back and was really encouraging about like, oh, you know, like I really dig what you're doing and blah, 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 blah.
I think Michigan, Detroit, it's always had that, I mean, Ann Arbor, it's always been kind of that way. You know, it's real isolated, so people don't really, they're not so quick to dismiss things, you know, because there's not that many people doing things in general, you know, making music in general. So it's kind of, you're a little bit more open-minded and also curious.
Michigan's got a very rich history of music, and I think it's easy too. People are a little more open-minded, so little weird things like little pockets of, you know, odd music or whatever can flourish, because people seem to be like, a little more open-minded to check stuff out.
Our city is full of corruption, full of drugs, broke as shit. And like I said, it doesn't really offer any future. So like without that future, like I think that's where you get like that like particular like scummy Michigan sound that like I seem to hear in all the releases. Is it's all kind of depressing in a good way.
Everyone who was involved were friends. Like that was always like in my head from really young, you know, that like everyone who's making this music or musician, I don't know, it just was like, it's not so fun, you know, these aren't like out of touch people. They're totally normal, you know, Michigan people, like family, you know. I mean, Olson always says that, like Michigan's different because it's a lot like family. Like the music scene is more like a family, you know, than like a New York, you know, music scene. That's the thing, right? Music scene, the music business. It's real sleazy, man.
The Michigan scene is really tight-knit. Everybody seems to know each other. You know, Dillaway seems to have a massive presence in the Michigan community, and Olson, and it seems like their projects are like the cream of the crop projects, and then there's some other guys doing some stuff too. Just like super scummy electronics, like people in their basements doing noise for themselves.
No one really considers themselves to have fans rather than they have like colleagues or something, you know, friends, let's say that. You know, a brother who does the same, a little brother. Fucking cousin, yeah. There is money being made, but you know, it's in such a small amount, and it's totally just being exchanged between all of us, you know, all of our friends. We're just exchanging the same money, you know. It's great. It's great.
It
like,
just gets fed
right back into it. Like, oh, thanks for buying this, you know, and I'm gonna do a new tape, you know. I'm gonna put out a new record or something. And I really, you know, that goes back to the whole family thing. Maybe that's why Michigan's special, but it's hard to say.
I don't think that there's any like financial future for like the people participating in noise in Michigan, but like I don't think it's gonna stop. If anything, it's just, you know, their economy getting worse and our city dying and these people having less and less hope. The sounds are gonna get gnarlier.